Okay, so welcome to Enlighten Up Radio, and today I've got Kiri Dews, who is a Maori elder and the founder of the original 13 Grandmothers of Australia. So welcome, Kiri.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to talk about today, Kiri, is a little bit about what's going on with you today.
Well, I'm here on this beautiful little island, Tasmania, attending this gathering that you put on, and I'm enjoying the experience.
Yeah, she's here for the Weekend of Wisdom at the Vortex Healing Center on the east coast of Tassie in Grey, right outside of St. Mary's. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about this weekend is, what brought you to that moment of saying, I want to pursue a spiritual life. I want to pursue this link with my ancestors and with the first peoples of New Zealand.
Well, I guess I've been linked with my ancestors all my life. Brought up. Our Maori people are very spiritual people, and we've always lived close to nature and been connected with our ancestors through the treasures that they left us, like the stories, our genealogy, our history, and our traditions.
You've mentioned something. I know there's a lot of issues in New Zealand as well as in Australia and around the world with First Peoples and their expression and communicating even language and the culture to the younger generations. What happened with your tribe, with your people?
As far as the language
in the last few decades.
Well, people that are 50 plus, they've lost. They still got a bit of their language. But anybody under that age of 50 have lost the language because it was taken out of schools. It wasn't allowed to be spoken. We were fined for speaking it or punished in schools by polishing windows, cleaning windows, and polishing floors. It was an absolute no-no to speak our language. But in the homes, it was spoken freely. That was the language. In a way, it was beneficial to us because now I'm comfortable in both worlds. I have English. I have no qualms with English and with my language.
And so what's happening today to help bring along some of the young people to learn the language and their culture and their history? What's happening in your world to do that?
Okay. In my world, I'm living in Australia. I have been for the last 45 years. And when I go home, I'm amazed at what the changes that's happened in New Zealand. In 1983, there was an explosion in Maori learning, and the government at that time was David Lange. He was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Maori people weren't allowed. Everything was so expensive they couldn't afford to go to training colleges. But then the government of that time in 1983 made it accessible to Maori students. So then the language started to flourish. And now we have schools, language nests, and primary schools and secondary schools up to universities are all speaking Maori.
Oh, that's great.
The native language.
Yeah. So, quick question. What was the biggest challenge you faced in your life in this pursuit, either of helping the First Peoples of New Zealand or reaching your enlightenment? I know you're a healer and a poet. And what was the hardest part?
As far as my language is concerned.
Your language or your path to your spiritual awakening?
Well, the real... I think, we lived in sort of like a glass cage, my people. We had our own comfort zones and never broadened our horizons by being involved with other cultures. But my move to Australia in 1974, and I started attending spiritual gatherings, and that was an awakening for me, and meeting all these beautiful people in different cultures from around the world. And it's also, I've never traveled so much. I'm always happy to see my bed when I come home, because I'm either in Canada, in America, all around Australia, New Zealand. Now here I am in Tasmania.
And what's the most common mistake you see other spiritual people making?
I think they don't hug enough.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Very good. And what's your remedy for that? Do you have any special hugging techniques?
No, just keep quiet. You don't need words when you're hugging. It's the power of a hug is amazing.
I'm going to ask you another question that I actually know the answer to, but I want our listeners to hear this. Can you share with our listeners how you say I love you in Maori?
Well, Maori people are action people. They don't have to say it. You can feel it in the hug. Again, I go back to the hug.
Yeah, nice.
And we don't have to say I love you. I think it's the hardest thing to do, to look into someone's eyes and say I love you. It's really hard, unless you're by yourself. It's easy then. But I don't like saying I love you unless I feel inside me that I really mean it. I think those words are flung around too loosely today. But there's no depth. It dies after you've said I love you. Because if you can really look into a person's eyes for long enough and tell them you love them and finish it off with a hug.
Oh, that's nice.
And I think that seals the
seals the deal.
Seals the deal.
Nice. That's great. And I know you've talked about you've had some extraordinary hugging experiences. What was the most amazing hugging experience you've had?
I think it was in the swimming pool.
All right, just with that is really what Kiri said. In a swimming pool. Okay, let's hear about it.
Well, I joined a swimming club in Broadmeadows in Melbourne. And I used to go every morning at 7. And I had just finished swimming a length. And I was catching my breath at the other end of the pool. And I could see this man coming towards me. And he was coming so fast, and he hit his head on the end of the pool. And when he stood up, he was kind of stunned. And so I just grabbed him, and I gave him a big hug. And I don't want to say the rest. Okay, he had his head, and I thought, oh my God, he's got his head in my boobs. But I was feeling so sorry for him. I just hugged him, and he just sort of stayed there for a while. And when I let him go, he looked at me and he said, he had tears in his eyes, and he said he'd never ever had a hug. And I think that's the saddest thing. There's so many people that we don't know about that have never experienced the power of a hug. So that was my first experience.
Well, just for the record, I think it's okay for spiritual people to say the word boobs. I
can't help it. That's the first word that came to me.
That's all right. So you've got a lot of other interests as well, Kiri. Tell us about, I think you've got a book coming out. What's this about?
It's my life story.
In poetry?
And I do, I write poetry.
Is the book a poetry book, or the book is your... The
book is my life story.
Nice. And what's it going to be called?
It's called My Life Story, and then the second one I'm on to is called The Journey Continues.
Nice.
Or The Journey Goes On.
Excellent.
Because I'm still enjoying life.
Yeah, that's fabulous. So is there one particular resource that people listening all over the world, how they could get in tune with the kind of things that you do?
Well, they can look on the net.
Yeah, do you have a website?
My poetry on the net, on poetry.com. Or they can go on my website.
What's that one?
Kotuku Dreaming, Kotuku Dreaming, .maori.nz.
Kotuku Dreaming.maori, MAORI.net .nz. No
Kotuku Dreaming.maori.nz.
.nz. Great. That'll be up on the show page for people who are looking. And what is there any other words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I don't know whether they think it'll be wise, but I would like to recite a poem.
I'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear it.
Well, this one is called A Humpback Whale, and I wrote it for my son. but I'd like to share it with the world. The humpback whale. Gracefully cruising, the giant humpback plunges deeply into the dark blue ocean, crooning softly as he joins the pod, searching for sustenance on the ocean floor, then rising swiftly to shatter the surface for a welcome blast of air, a glimpse of blue sky, a kiss from the wind, and the humpback's gone again, down into the blue, the deepest blue, in the sea of Tangaroa.
Beautiful.
So Tangaroa is your Neptune.
Okay. Is that going to be in your poetry book?
Yes. It's on the net already.
Nice.
Published by the International Society of Poets.
Lovely.
Which I'm a member.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, great. Well, thank you, Kiri. We love sharing these stories, and I know Kiri's got lots more stories, so go and check out her website at kotodreaming.maori.nz. And I hope to see you again soon, Kiri.
My pleasure.